Good day, everyone, my dear students. So today we're going to continue our discussion. So we are now on lesson number 10. Our lesson number 10 will focus on introduction to quadratic function. So in this topic, we are here going to find out if a given equation is a quadratic function or if a given table of values is showing quadratic function. So before we proceed to our topic for today, let us first recall your lesson about function during your grade 8. So because there are things there on your lesson that we can use in order for us to understand about what we call quadratic function. So what are those things? So unahin natin yung tinatawag na domain. Domain, these are values of the variable x. So we can easily find out the values of the variable x when we do have a given table of values. Because those values of x, particularly those values above uh, the table of values, those are the values of x. And we call those values of x as domain. On the other hand, range is what we call to all possible values of the variable y. Usually, yung y, yung range natin, yun yung nasa lower part of the table of values. Those are values of y. And those values of y are also called as range. This domain and range, we can also make use of this in discussing topics about quadratic function. Aside from domain and range, another thing that na i-recall natin is yung tinatawag natin correspondence. So ano ba yung correspondence na yon? We define correspondence as a relation between sets in which each member of one set is associated with one or more members of the other. With the definition itself, it's a relation between sets, wherein each member of one set is associated with one or more members of the other set. That's why when we are talking about correspondence, it has classifications. So there are three classifications of correspondence. That's namely, number one, we do have the one-to-one correspondence. When we say one-to-one correspondence, it means that a unique element in the domain is paired to a unique element in the range. So kumbaga meron yung meron kang element in the domain na meron siyang isang kapartner lang no sa element in the range. So we call that as one-to-one correspondence. Second, we do have many-to-one correspondence. So it means that two or more elements in the range is paired to one element in the range. So, ibig sabihin kapag meron kang two or more elements sa domain mo, then yung two or more elements na yon, two or more elements nakapair siya sa iisang element ng in the range, then we call that as the many-to-one correspondence. Then the third one is what we call as the one-to-many correspondence. The one-to-many correspondence, ibig sabihin yan, one element in the domain is paired to two or more elements in the range. Sabi, kapag meron ka isang element in the domains, nakapair siya to kahit sa ilan, two or more elements in the range. So, ayun naman ibig sabihin natin ng one-to-many correspondence. So, in the three classifications of correspondence, we can identify there a function from not a function. So, yung one-to-one correspondence together with many-to-one correspondence, we call that as a function. While the one-to-many correspondence is not a function. Bakit natin nasabi na yung one-to-one and many-to-one correspondence are functions while one-to-many correspondence is not a function? Ano ba yung definition natin ng function? So we define function as a relation in which each element in the domain is mapped or paired to exactly one element in the range. So look at its definition. Each element in the domain is mapped or paired to exactly one element in the range. So, bawat element in the domain daw, may kapartner siyang isang element in the range. So that's why we call that as a function. Aside from that, another definition of a function is that no ordered pairs that have equal abscissas or x coordinate. Wala daw ordered pairs na merong equal abscissas or x coordinate. Because if that happens, so that's already not a function. So that's how we define function. Now, para mas maintindihan natin mabuti yung sinasabi natin, let's have these examples. So let's have the first example. So we do have here a given mapping diagram. So there are two given mapping diagram here, to the left and to the right. So if you're going to look at the mapping diagram to the left, so there are four elements in the domain. The domain is on the left, the range is on the right. There are four elements in the domain and also four elements in the range. If you're going to look at it, each element in the domain is paired to exactly one element in the range. So that's why that mapping diagram on the left is what we call as a function. So basically, it follows the one-to-one correspondence. While on the right side ng mapping diagram, as you can see, there are only three elements in the domain and there are four elements in the range. So if you're going to look at it, since may three elements lang in the domain, so isang element doon mapipair to another element in the range kasi walang kapartner isang element sa range kapag hindi natin ginawa yon. So, if that is the case, so in-apply natin dito yung many-to-one correspondence. So, or one-to-many correspondence rather. One-to-many correspondence. So, that's why that mapping diagram to the right is what we call as not a function. So, that's how we identify a function from not a function using a mapping diagram. Another example, this time let's make use of unordered pairs. So we do have two set of ordered pairs given, set of ordered pairs in A and B. So the set of ordered pairs in A, if you're going to look at it, so particularly just look at the x coordinates of the given ordered pair, set of ordered pairs in A. So if you're going to look at it, that's -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So sabi doon sa definition of function, if there are no ordered pairs that have equal abscissas, then we can consider that as function. So ibig sabihin, that set of ordered pairs in A is what we call as a function. Then if you're going to look at the set of ordered pairs in B, looking at the value of their x coordinate, so 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So naulit yung 1 na x coordinate. So that means, so because of that reason, so we can consider now B as not a function. Because again, we applied here one-to-many correspondence. Because in letter A, we applied one-to-one correspondence. So as long as nakita nyo in an ordered pair, set of ordered pairs na ulit yung x coordinate or yung abscissa mo, so that is already not a function. So we are not dealing with a function if that is the case. Then that is with the use of an ordered pair. What if the given is the table of values? So there are two given table of values here. The table of values to the left, as you can see, just look at the values of x, o yung tinatawag nating domain. So pag yung domain, walang naulit na numbers, then we can consider that as a function. But if we're going to look at table of values to the right, as you can see, looking at the values of x here or the x coordinate, so as you can see, naulit yung 1, naulit din yung 2. So that means that table of values to the right is showing not a function. So that's how we identify through mapping diagram, ordered pairs, and table of values if it's a function or not a function. But in this afternoon, what we are going to determine are quadratic functions. So paano naman natin malalaman na quadratic functions yung given equation natin? So, ano ba yung definition natin ng quadratic function? We define quadratic function because quadratic function is written in the form y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c where A, B, and C are real numbers and A should not be equal to 0. A quadratic function is also an equation. So in place of 0 in a quadratic equation, we're going to replace it by y. So it will become now y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a must not be equal to 0. Again, your a must not be equal to 0. It's because if a is 0, this quadratic term will be eliminated. So it's not anymore called as quadratic function. So that's why your a must not be equal to 0. Then that form of the equation there, na y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, we call that as the general form of the quadratic function. Again, we are calling that as the general form of the quadratic function. So yung three terms in quadratic equation, then inequate into y. So we call that as a general form of the quadratic function. Then another equation here, which is in the form y is equal to a times the quantity x minus h quantity squared plus k, yan naman yung tinatawag natin as the vertex form or standard form of the quadratic function. Take note, we do have the general form na in the form y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, and we do have the standard form, which is also known as the vertex form, in the form y is equal to a times the quantity x minus h quantity squared plus k. So that hk that that you will see in that form, vertex form of the quadratic function, yun yung tinatawag natin as the vertex. Kaya nga siya tinawag as the vertex form other than standard form. So we can call it standard form or the vertex form because that hk there na makikita natin in the given equation is what we call as the vertex. So in place of y, quadratic function also uses f of x, we read that as f of x, g of x, and h of x, and so on, in place of y. So sometimes if we do have a given two or more given quadratic functions, so it's not always na makikita lang natin ay y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c or this. So sometimes makikita natin is f of x, g of x, and h of x. But all of those na nakita natin, ginagamit lang natin yon in place of y. But still, at the back of our mind, alam natin that it is equal to y. That's also the same as y. But we're only using that for us to know that we are pertaining to a different equations. Let's say kung sinabi ko kanina, meron tayong two or more given equations. So para malaman natin na iba-iba yung given equations natin, so we are not only using y. Sometimes we are using f of x, or kapag dumami pa, g of x, h of x, and so on and so forth. So now, so in order for us to determine if a given equation is a quadratic equation, we do have here things that we have to bear in mind. So what are these things that we have to bear in mind? So these things na kailangan natin tandaan in order for us to determine if a given equation is showing quadratic function or not is we will still hide it through an acronym and through a word na tatawagin natin as YOSI. Oh, bakit nga ba YOSI? YOSI is a slang term for cigarette. Slang term for cigarette. So, ito yung one of the vices. This is one of the vices that you can encounter in your life being a teenager. So, but since you know that taking cigarette is bad for your health, so if you do encounter it, so since nasa tamang isip naman na kayo, you know already what's right and wrong, and you know already kung ano yung dapat ninyong gawin. So if you do have strong willpower, I don't think matitempt ka to try taking cigarette. Kasi since you know, umpisa pa lang na alam mo na masama sa kalusugan yung pagsisigarilyo, so alam mo dapat yung gagawin mo. Since you are old enough to decide on your own, so I guess may isip mo rin na mali yung pagtitake ng sigarilyo, pagtitake ng cigarettes. Kasi sabi nga, di ba, uh, it depends on your will if you're going to take it or not. But I think if you have strong will, so I don't think matitend ka again to take cigarettes. Kasi alam mo, kaya nga di ba sa mga commercials, kapag kino-commercial sa may nakalagay na ano na cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. So doon pa lang sa paalala na yon, alam mo na masama sa kalusugan mo yung pagtitake ng cigarettes. But others are using it maybe for relaxation. The others are taking it after eating. Pampaalis lasa siguro or uh, matanggalan yung umay nung kinain. And usually also kapag nagsi-CR, they are taking cigarettes. Or kapag merong happy-happy ang mga magkakaibigan, they are also taking cigarette. So, bakit ba natitempt yung iba na mag-take ng cigarettes? That is due to peer pressure. Kasi syempre, if you do have friends who are taking cigarettes, so siguro if they ask you to try cigarettes, so matitempt ka kasi your friends. So, iisipin nila that if you will not try it, you're not already friends. So, ganun yung thinking. So, you are not belong to the group. Parang ganun yung sinasabi. Kapag hindi mo ginawa yan, you're not belong to the group, di ba? Yun yung usual. Pero kasunod ng sinabi nga natin kanina, kapag strong will mo that you know that taking cigarettes is dangerous to your health or masama para sa'yo, so I don't think mayayaya ka na to take cigarettes. And to those friends naman that are forcing their friends to take it, so please be considerate to the decisions of your friends. So, ano natin sila, igalang natin yung decision na if they don't want to take cigarette, then let them not do it. Kasi it's their decision not to take it. So, kasi darating sa buhay natin na matitempt tayo. But when that time comes, dapat you know already your decision on if you're going to take it or not. But my advice is not to take any cigarettes. So para syempre mas healthy din yung pamumuhay mo when you grow old. Then so that when you have your own family, mas matagal ka pang mabubuhay para makasama sila. Not unlike magsisimula ka ng mag-start ka na bata ka pa lang nagyoyosi ka na, so baka mag-end yung life mo ng mas maaga din. So others will not going to have their own family. So ganun yung possible na mangyayari. So when you are taking cigarette. But if you are taking it already, so there is, since you are still young, there is a time for you to change. So pwede mo siyang baguhin. May iba nga kahit chain smoker sila, sa isang araw nakakaubos sila ng isang kahan ng sigarilyo, still namamanage pa rin na naitigil yon. Oo, mahirap kasi di ba nga yung mga vices na yan, sinasabi nila, nakaka-addict. So nakaka-addict. So, ganun din yung nararamdaman ng iba. So, if you are taking cigarettes, nag-umpisa ka ng bata ka palang, ganun mo ka na, mahirap nang alisin yun sa system ng katawan mo. Kapag inalis mo siya at an instant, magkakasakit ka, possible na magkasakit ka. Yes, oo, possible yun. Pero it's on your own will, on your own free will, if you're going to stop it or not. So, may chance pa para i-stop natin yun. Pagkakataon pa. If you, all you have to do is just think of the future ng pamilya mo, ng mga anak mo, mga magiging anak mo. Just think of them. Think of the future na naghihintay para sa iyo. Kung gusto pang mabuhay ng mas matagal, then better stop smoking. Kasi sinabi nga, again, smoking is dangerous to your health. So, ganun nga yung nangyayari. When you stop smoking at that instant, to chain smoker ka, possible na magkasakit ka. Pero, kung strong-willed ka na magbago, na alisin yung pagsisigarilyo sa buhay mo, then, magagawa mo yun. Magagawa mo siya. I do have a friend na dati, lagi-lagi siya nagsisigarilyo. But now, he's not taking any cigarettes. So, ibig sabihin, nagawa niya mawala yung sa system ng katawan niya. So, it's just a matter of time. It takes time, oo, it takes time. But, still, paunti-unti, nawawala siya. So, nagsimula siguro ng isa-isang sa isang araw, tapos palit-palit, 10 na lang, 5, isa hanggang sa masanay na yung katawan niya na mawala sa system niya yung paninigarilyo. So, ganun lang naman yun. So, it's just a matter of will. Strong will, your will for you to stop taking cigarettes. So, again, my stand there is, since bata ka pa, so better not try cigarette if you want to have a better future, a better life in the future. Kasi ibig sabihin nun, if you are not taking cigarettes, that means, or kung wala kang kahit anong bisyo, that means ahaba pa yung buhay mo at makakasama pa ng matagal yung mga mahal mo sa buhay. So again, don't take cigarettes. So that's the message of the things that we have to bear in mind na tinatawag natin YOSI. So ano nga ba yung YOSI na yan? In order for us to determine if a given equation is a quadratic function or not. Tunayin natin yung Y. Y stands for you based it on its definition. Of course, when there is a given equation, for you to determine if that given equation is a quadratic function or not, of course, always based on its definition. So if it satisfies the definition of the quadratic function, then that equation is a quadratic function. O stands for, of course, make sure of the following. So aside from basing it on its definition, so there are also things that we have to make sure for us to know that a given equation is a quadratic function. Una, if it can be written in the form y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, so in place of y, rather, pwedeng nakalagay doon is f of x, pwedeng g of x, or h of x. Pwedeng ganun yung makita natin. So, if it can be written in the general form of the quadratic function or in vertex form, pwede rin yun. Then it is also considered as quadratic function if no negative exponents. Aside from written that can be written in this form, dapat there are no negative exponents. And third, no radicals on the variable part. So wala dapat tayong makikita doon na radicals na ang radical niya or the one inside the radical side is a variable. Because if that happens, that given equation is not considered as quadratic function. Now, that is if the given is an equation. So what if the given is the table of values? So how are we going to identify or to determine if that table of values is showing quadratic function or not? So, sabi dito, S stands for second difference of Y values is the key. So, para ma-identify natin through the given table of values that it shows quadratic function or not, we are going to get the second difference of y values. Because according to this, that second difference is the key for us to find out if the given table of values is showing quadratic function or not. So if their second difference are the same, then the table of values is showing quadratic function. Later on through example, ipapakita natin kung paano tinatawag natin second difference. Kung bakit yun yung key for us to know if the given table of values is showing quadratic function or not. Then, for us to really make sure of it, sabi dito, I stands for i-check if the first difference in x values are the same. So, just for checking, so since once we found out already that our second difference is already equal, then we have to check the first difference if they are also the same. Kapag the same yon, then we can really already sure that a given that a given equation is a quadratic function. So these are the things that we have to bear in mind in order for us to determine if a given equation is a quadratic function or not. All we have to do is to apply the steps we call Yossi. So every time that you are seeing a cigarette, that means you are already thinking of your steps or the things that you have to bear in mind in order for you to determine if a given equation is a quadratic function or not. Now let's apply it through examples. Let's have here example number 1. In example number 1, the given is y is equal to x squared plus 4. If you're going to analyze that given equation, so if you're going to determine if quadratic function or not, so you will find out that it is quadratic function. Why? Why it's quadratic function? Now, if you know the definition of quadratic equation, so applicable pa rin yung definition nun. Ibig sabihin, it's not always na ang given equation natin are complete na merong quadratic term, may linear term, tsaka may constant term. So, di ba nga meron tayong tinatawag na quadratic equations na considered as quadratic equations even without linear term or even without the constant term. So, ganun din yun. So, it's the same thing that we are going to carry that definition as a definition also of the quadratic function for us to identify if the given equation is a quadratic function or not. So, eto, di ba, kapag ganito na-equate natin to 0, quadratic equation siya. Pero ito, pag in-equate natin into y, then it's already called as quadratic function. Let's have number 2. Hopefully na intindihan natin yung example number 1. Let's have example number 2. On example number 2, the given is y is equal to 3x minus 14. So if we're going to identify or to determine if that equation is quadratic function or not, we'll find out that it's not quadratic function. Obviously, bakit? Because there is no quadratic term in that given equation. So wala tayong quadratic term, wala tayo yung term na ang highest exponent of the variable is 2. So wala tayong ganon. So that's why we consider that equation as not quadratic function. Let's have number 3. So for number 3, we do have here the given f of x is equal to 7 minus 5x squared. So analyzing it, we will find out that example number 3 is showing quadratic function. Bakit quadratic function? So aside from it uses f of x, na sinabi natin in place of y, pwedeng gamitin yon. Pwede rin, as you can see on the right side, meron ka tayong quadratic term. Yun nga lang, it was not arranged in the right form. But according to the definition, sabi doon, it can be written in the right form of the quadratic function. So that's why example number 3 is considered as quadratic function. Let's have example number 4. For example, number 4, the given is x squared plus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. Is it quadratic function or not quadratic function? So upon analyzing it, we'll find out that example number 4 is not quadratic function because it is a quadratic equation. Diba ang quadratic function equated into y? In case of y, it can be f of x, h of x, or g of x, or so on and so forth. So since it is equated into 0, then we call that as not quadratic function. It is a quadratic equation. So, let's have number 5. For number 5, the given is y is equal to 2x squared minus square root of 3x plus 1. So, analyze the given equation, then determine if it's quadratic function or not quadratic function. So, on analyzing it, so you will find out that it is quadratic function. Oh, baka may naguguluhan kung bakit siya quadratic function. According to the definition, to the things that we have to bear in mind, no radicals on the variable part. Even though we do have radical radicals here, involving radicals here, but that radicals, ang radical niya ay constant. So walang problema if your radical is a constant. Nagkakaroon lang tayo ng problema if this x is inside that radical sign. So dun siya magiging hindi quadratic function. But this given, still we can consider this as quadratic function. So example number 6. So example number 6, the given is g of x is equal to 2x raised to negative 2 minus 3x minus 2. So if you're going to analyze it, you'll find out that example number 6 is not quadratic function. For the reason that meron siyang negative exponent. It has negative exponent. Sabi nga doon sa things that we have to bear in mind, there are no negative exponents. So for us to consider that if it is a quadratic function or not. So kapag may negative exponent tayo nakita, so that is not considered already as a quadratic function. Example number 7. Y is equal to the quantity of 2x plus 3 times the quantity of x minus 1. Quadratic function or not quadratic function? So if you're going to analyze it more clearly, you'll find out that it is quadratic function. Bakit quadratic function? Di ba, when we discuss quadratic equation, there are what we call equations which are transformable to quadratic equations. So ganun din yun. So we do have here binomial factors. So if we are going to apply FOIL method here, we'll come up with the quadratic term also. And since it was already equated to y, then makaka-form tayo ng tinatawag natin quadratic function in the end once we simplify these binomial factors here when we apply FOIL method. So that's why example number 7 is considered as quadratic function. Let's have example number 8. Example number 8, the given is 2x times the quantity x minus 3 minus y is equal to 0. So analyze the given equation. So upon analyzing it, you'll find out that the given equation is showing quadratic function. Yes, it's still quadratic function because you can arrange it in the right form of the quadratic function by simply moving negative y to the right. When you move it to the right, since it jumped the equal sign, then the sign will change. It will become now positive y. So that would be y now is equal to, when you apply distributive property here, when multiplying 2x times x and 2x times negative 3, will form a quadratic term also. That's why we can form a quadratic function once we simplify this given equation here. Next, number 9. For number 9, we do have here a given table of values. So from the given table of values, we are going to identify if the table of values showing quadratic function or not. Paano ba yun? Sabi sa things that we have to bear in mind, sabi doon, the second difference is the key. Paano kunin second difference? Ganito yon. So, you are just going to subtract starting from the right to left. So, 5 minus 3, you'll come up with 2. 3 minus 1 is 2, 1 minus 3 is negative 2, then 3 minus 5 is negative 2. That's the first difference. So, 2 minus 2, that would be 0. 2 minus negative 2 is 4. Then negative 2 minus negative 2 is 0. So, hindi pare-parehas yung kalalabasan nung second difference niya. Even though yung first difference ng x values niya are the same, but hindi na-satisfy yung second difference of the y values. So that's why example number 9 is not quadratic function. Dito natin, let's have another example involving table of values. So let's have the first difference ng y. 24 minus 15. That is 9. 15 minus 8 is 7. 8 minus 3 is 5. 3 minus 0 is 3. So meron kang 9, 7, 5, 3 as the first difference. Second difference is the key. 9 minus 7 is 2. 7 minus 5 is 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. So they do have the same second difference. So if they do have the same second difference, check mo ngayon yung first difference ng x values. They are the same. 5 minus 4 is 1. 4 minus 3 is 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So if that is the case, then this table of values is showing quadratic function. Next tayo, example number 10. Number 11 rather. So for example number 11, we do have here a given table of values again. So we do have 62. Let's find out for the second difference. 62 minus 34. We do have here 28. That's correct. So 34 minus 14, that would be 20. So 28, 20. 14 minus 2, that would be 12. Then 2 minus negative 2, that would be positive 4. 28 minus 20, that would be 8. 20 minus 12, that will also be 8. Then 12 minus 4, that is also 8. So their second difference is 8. Then look at the first difference of the x values. So upon looking at it, so 10 minus 8, that would be 2. Then 8 minus 4 is equal to 4. So hindi na agad equal yung first difference. So even though nag-equal siya yung second difference ng y values, but looking at the first difference of the x values, dun siya hindi na-satisfy yung things that we have to bear in mind. So that's why this example number 11 is showing not quadratic function. Nakuha yun. So let's try another example, number 12. For example, number 12, we do have here another given table of values. So again, to check that if this table of values is showing quadratic function, check natin second difference of y values. 33 minus 21 is 12. 21 minus 11 is 10. 11 minus 3 is 8. Then 3 minus negative 3 is 6. So that would be 12, 10, 8, 6. So 10 minus 12 minus 10 is 2. 10 minus 8 is 2. 8 minus 6 is also 2. So tama yun. Second difference niya are the same. Then looking at the x values, so kung alam mo sunod-sunod yon, alam mo that the first difference of it are the same. Kasi sunod-sunod yon, so obviously, automatically, their first difference are the same. So the second difference are the same. The first difference of x values are also the same. Then, example number 12 is showing quadratic function. Kaya yun? So let's have another example, number 13. So another given table of values here. So that would be 8 minus 4. That would be 4. 4 minus 2. That would be 2. 2 minus negative 2. That would be 4. The negative 2 minus negative 4 is 2. So 8 minus 4. That would be 4. Minus 2. That would be 2. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So doon pa lang, hindi na agad sila equal. So obviously, no need for you to find out the first difference of x if the second difference is not already equal. So dapat mag-equal yung second difference niya para ma-consider natin as quadratic function. So that's why example number 13 is not considered as quadratic function. So that would be all for today. I hope that you already know on how to determine if a given equation or a given table of values is showing quadratic function or not. So see you next meeting. Goodbye.